Hi guys, I'm Aaron Runk, and today what we're going to be doing is a full setup on our Venture machine. This is a 3-axis mill, and please pay special attention to these instructions because this is going to help you get set up correctly and feel confident running your parts. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to come to my machine, and I've already turned on the power in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the on button, and I'm going to release my e-stop. Now if you want, you can release the e-stop first and then hit the power on button. Sometimes some machines will give you an alarm saying you have to release the emergency stop after you've hit the power on switch, and some will not. So it really depends on the machine. But for this example, I've just hit the power on button and then I've hit release the emergency stop. So the first thing that comes up on my screen is it says need manual home. So I want to make sure that my doors are fully closed, and I'm not slamming my doors, I'm just closing them shut. If you'll note here, I got my modes right, and I'm in edit mode. So all the way to the left is edit. So as I turn this, I want to be in the manual home. So I want to go to the home position. So it's memory, remote, MDI, handle, jog, rapid, and reference return. So this symbol right here is the reference return, which also symbolizes homing out the machine. So with it at the home position, I have my auto return. So what happens is I push and hold, and all my axes start going home. Now I can let go of this button, but if you'll notice, all these lights are blinking. If I hit position all, you'll notice that as these stop moving, these lights have all gone solid. So that lets me know that I am at home. So on this machine, everything's at home position. What I want to do is I want to make sure that all my offsets, my work offsets, and my tool offsets have all been zeroed out. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to set tool links and I'm going to set work offsets. Now this machine is a little bit tricky because if you'll notice, if I go into position page, I have a relative part of my positions, right? I also have a machine and an absolute. Now most every machine that you run, the tool links will be used as the machine page. However, on this machine, it's going to be looking at the relative page. So with my machine at home position, my Z0 has to be origin. So I can go Z origin if it is not. Okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to go into my work offsets. I want to make sure this is also 0. However, on this one I can hit 0 input and that'll take it back to 0. However, this was already at 0, but just in case it is not, that's how you would fix it. So the first thing I want to do, I powered up my machine, made sure my zeros are not there. I want to load my program from the card onto the memory, okay, onto the MCU. So I'm going to go into edit mode. You notice that I'm in edit mode. I'm going to hit the soft key program, operation, plus arrow, read. Now if you'll notice in my program right here, it shows the file to be O, capital O, 2222. Now notice there's not a .txt on it, and if you look over here at the type, it says file. It doesn't say text file, it doesn't say Word document, it doesn't say NC, it says file. That means that if it does say text file and you don't see the extension at the end of it, you'll have to update your folder options to show this. So what I've done is I've gotten rid of the .txt. So now I'm back at my machine, and I'm going to go to O, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 twos, just like it showed on the file. And when we hit execute, you'll notice just for a second it showed the word input. So on input, once you see that, you'll notice that it has loaded up my program all the way. So if for some reason you had an alarm and it said that you didn't have enough room, you'd have to delete whatever part of the program it put in there, make some space, and then re-download that program again, just like we did. All right, so for this process, if you'll look at our tools, you'll notice that we have our 1, 2, 3 block, we have our indicator, we have our edge finder, our parallels, and our material, and our vice handle. Now with the indicator, what you'll notice is I've actually gone through and I've ran my indicator from this side to this side and made sure that there was less than 1/1000th difference from side to side. Once I did that, I was ready to go ahead and start this video. So what you'll need to use that indicator for is putting that into your drill chuck. So if you'll notice, we have our drill chuck. You'll put that into the machine, and then you'll put it into the drill chuck, and then you'll check from left to right. So once that's all set, I'm gonna go ahead and load up my material, because if you'll notice, this program calls for a 4" by 4" by 1/4" thick piece of material and tells me in the instruction setup that XY0 is the bottom left corner. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and load my material. I'll indicate the bottom left corner, and then I'm gonna pay attention to this add +30 to the X and Y offsets. So that means the bottom left corner is 0, but then I'm gonna shift a +30 in the X and Y, and you'll also notice that Z0 is the top of my part. So let's go ahead and get these parallels in this part into the machine. When I'm loading parallels into the machine, I wanna make sure that everything's nice and clean on my vise and on my parallels. I don't want any chips or oil, so on and so forth. And then what I do is, you notice I was going back and forth. What I'm doing is I'm actually ringing the parallels to the inside of the vise. It actually causes it to suction to them very slightly. Depends on how new your parallels are. So now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead and take my material, and on this process I have sawed sides and then I have non-sawed sides. So I'm going to go ahead and vise on the non-sawed sides, and I'll put it right there in the middle because this is a one operation part. I'll grab my vise handle and I'll go ahead and tighten it up. When I'm tightening this up, I don't need to put my entire body weight on it. I just need to vise on it, give it a little bit, and then what I do is I come over here and I want to tap on it. And after I tap on it, I'm going to feel to make sure that my parallels don't move. You'll see that they do move. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen up a little bit. I'm going to snug it, and then I'm going to tighten it lightly again. And then I'm going to tighten a little bit more and tap it again. So you'll notice that I'm not hitting it super hard and I'm not allowing my hammer to bounce. Now that I have it pretty tight and the parallels are down, I'm going to go ahead and put everything to the side. The next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and get my drill chuck into the machine, and I want to get my edge finder into the drill chuck. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and put my edge finder in the drill chuck. And the reason why I'm doing this while it's not in the machine is I want you to get an idea that you can put the edge finder into the drill chuck and you don't need a wrench to tighten it down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up far enough for my edge finder to go in the drill chuck. Once it is in the drill chuck, I take it and I tighten it in there by hand. That's all you have to do, is give it a pretty good tight. So now I'm going to go into a manual mode, which could be handle, jog, or rapid. So I'm in handle. It does have an alarm. It just means that my doors are open. And while on handle, I'm going to push my tool release button up near the top by the spindle. So as I push this button, it's releasing so that I can put the tool in there. It does not matter the orientation. It just matters that I am around the drive lugs. So this right here and this right here needs to be around the drive lugs. While holding the tool up against the space of the spindle, I will push the tool release button again. If you're taking a tool out of the machine, be sure to push the button again before doing a tool change, or it will give you an alarm saying that the tool changer is not ready. So I have my edge finder in there. I have my material loaded. Let's go ahead and set our XY0. So I'm going to go into MDI mode. I'm going to push program. I'm going to type in S1200 M03 into block insert. So I'm going to close my doors and hit cycle start. So from here, I'm going to move into handle. And some machines, your spindle will stop, like this machine right here, what I'm going to do, if you'll notice, it went to stop. So I'm going to turn it 2 clockwise, or if I want to turn it counterclockwise, it can be done with the push of a button. So I'll go ahead and do it in counterclockwise so you can see both ways. I'm going to put my machine into position mode. I want to see what's going on here. So I'm going to come down, come to my part, and we're going to indicate our X0 first. So I'm just going to come about to the middle of the part, and I'm going to go until my edge finder comes over. Now notice I came in there pretty fast. Once you get close to the material, you'll notice that I'm in the far 100 times. That's way too fast for if you're learning. So once you get within an inch of the material, I want you to come down to that right there. Now that I'm pretty close to the material, I need to be in that because I need to see my edge finder break over. So I'm just going to click over. And if you'll notice, it just moved over ever so slightly. So I'm going to put my handle down, and I'm going to come into my position, and I'm going to hit X origin. Now there's 2 ways I can do this. I have X origin. I can come up and come over 100 thousandths because the diameter of my edge finder is 200 thousandths. Now I'm going to show you a little bit of a different way, but you really need to understand how that works. So I am 100 thousandths to the left of my material. I'm going to hit offsets, work offsets. I'm going to hit X0 measure. Now that is my current location, but if you'll notice, that needs to be 100 thousandths difference. So I want to move in the plus direction. My fingers point to the positive directions. This is my X, the plus direction, so that I am on the edge of that material. So I'm going to type in decimal 100 thousandths plus input. Now if you'll notice, that put me an additional 100 thousandths further away from home position. Okay, let that sink in. If you need to rewatch this, it's going to take a couple times for it to really sink in. So I'm going to do the same thing but with Y. So let's go ahead and go back into our handle mode and go back to position. I'll come up off the part. Now I'm going to move to the front of my material, and I'm going to come down very slowly because I don't want to take my edge finder and put it into my vise, which you will do if you are not in control of the machine. So I will go into Y, and normally you want your edge finder to kind of be spinning right now, but I'm going to come into it with it not spinning, and I'm just going to wait for it to start breaking over. Once it breaks over, because it wasn't spinning in the first place, I wasn't very accurate. So I'm going to come off the part, and I'm going to just dial in until it breaks over again. So there it goes. It did break over. I'm going to turn off my handle, and I'm going to do the same thing in Y that I did in X. I'm going to hit Y origin, and then I'm going to go my offsets, and I'm going to hit Y0 measure. Now I hit Y origin on my relative because I want to know where it's at, because here in a second I'm going to give the machine some commands and I want it to look right when I do that. So from here I need to move a positive 100 thousandths plus input. If you hit input, it'll put 100 thousandths right there and you'll have to start all over. So plus input made it a smaller negative, so it actually brought it closer to home. So that's good. I know that I went positive because that's which way my finger's pointing for the Y axis. So now I'm going to go ahead and raise up out of the way. Make sure you go the right direction and go slow if you need to, because you don't want to take your edge finder and put it into your vise. So the good news is I'm going to hit reset. We have successfully set our X and Y 0. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go get our tool. Okay, we're going to grab just a drill, one of the drills that we're using on this part, and we're going to set the tool length on the machine, and then we're also going to set our Z work offset. Okay, so this is one of the tools that I'll be using for this job, will be a center drill. And if I look at my tool list in edit mode, you'll see that I have a number 3 center drill as tool number 6. So what I want to do is make sure I put it in the right location. So I will take my edge finder out of my holder. And it's just simple, just unscrew it with your hand. I'll go ahead and leave my drill chuck in the machine for right now. And I want to call up in MDI. Notice I'm in MDI. If you're not on the right screen, you'll have to hit soft key program. You'll type in T6 M6 into block insert. T6 will call up the right pot. M6 will do the actual tool change. So with rapid at 0, so that I know it's going the right direction, I'll hit cycle start. I know it is going the right location. I'll turn it up to 25%. Now that it does have the right tool in the machine, you'll notice it says holder tool or head tool is tool number 6. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into handle a manual mode and unlock my spindle and put this into the head of the spindle. Remember, once it is on the drive lugs, I will push the tool release button again so that it locks the tool into the spindle. Now what I want to do is, while in handle, I'll push position, you don't have to, but I'm going to move to my table and I'm going to set my 1, 2, 3 block. We're going to set that tool length. So let's come over here, off to the left, and I'm going to go ahead and start coming down so that we can see the top of the 1, 2, 3 block. So what I'll do is I'll take it and I have it on the 3-inch side. I'm going to come below the 1, 2, 3 block, and then I'm going to start coming up 1 click at a time until it goes under the 1, 2, 3 block. So notice how I went 2 clicks, but I was also, you got to remember, I was in the 100 times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down 1 click, and then I'm going to go into the thousandths, the 10 times, okay? So this is the very accurate way of doing it. I'll start coming up 1 click at a time until it goes underneath the 1, 2, 3 block. So it went underneath the 1, 2, 3 block. Now I want to set my tool length. So the thing to remember before we even started, when the machine was at home, my relative had a 0 in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to offsets. I'm going to go to tool offsets. I'm going to position down to tool number 6 because that is what is in the head of the spindle. I'm going to hit Z input coordinates, input C. It's going to input this number right there. Now remember, that is the relative position. Now almost every other machine you're going to run into, that would be the machine position. You won't have to worry about what this machine does. So for example, on the work offset, it's a 0. So anytime I send this machine home, relative will always go back to 0 if that's where it was before I set the tool length. If for some reason there's a 3 inches right there, when I send this machine back to home position, it will put 3 inches into my relative position page, which means when I go to set my next tool length, it will be 3 inches different than the tool I just set. So make sure you can either do it 2 ways. You can set your work offset last, set all your tools, that way you don't have to worry about it. Or when you send it home to set the next tool's tool length, you have to origin out at home before you set the tool length, okay? So I'm not gonna set another tool length because this is the only tool I have here. So I'm gonna put this back to 0. Now what I have to do from this position is I need to origin out the relative page. So position, Z, origin. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my machine as a really big height gauge, because what I have to find out is the difference between here and here in the Z axis. Like, what is the difference? Now you'll notice, based on the Cartesian coordinate system, my fingers are pointing the plus direction. That will be a positive direction to the Z0, because right now, if I tell my machine to go to Z0, it's going to go to this surface right here, because That's where it thinks it's at. It's taking the tool length and it's going right to the 1, 2, 3 block. However, I need it to have a variable right here so it knows how high above the 1, 2, 3 block Z0 is. So Z0 is the top of my part. So I'm simply going to go into handle and I'm going to move to the top of my part. So I've origined out my Z. I'm going to move to the top of my part. Now remember, I'm going to go into a lower increments and I'm going to use a paper method to check my Z. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly come down to the top of my part until my paper stops moving. Once my paper stops moving, I know that I'm pretty close to the top of my part. So what I'm going to do, put my handle down. So looking at my relative, you'll see that it is 1 inch, 876 thousandths. That's how high it is from the top of my 1, 2, 3 block to the top of my part. That is the distance, and it is a positive number because I came from the top of my 1, 2, 3 block to the top of my part. If you had gone from the top of your part to the top of your 1, 2, 3 block, it would be the same number, but it would be a negative. You do not want to put a negative in there because remember, we set our tools to the top of the 1, 2, 3 block. If I put a negative in my work offset, it's going to go 1 inch, 876 thousandths below my 1, 2, 3 block, which is a very big crash. Okay, so I'm going to type that number in on my work offset. So 1 inch, 876 thousandths, and I'm simply going to push input. So now I have successfully set my X and Y. I've set a tool length, and I've actually set my work offset using my tool length on the machine. So very good way of doing things, except there's one more thing we have to look at. So in edit, if you'll notice, it says once we have our XY0, we have to shift 30 thousandths in both offsets. So just like the 100 thousandths, I'm going to go to my offsets and I'm going to type in a positive 30 thousandths plus input, and in my Y I'm going to put a positive 30 thousandths plus input. So now I have shifted from my origin 30 thousandths plus and 30 thousandths plus in the X and Y axes. So now I want to show you guys a code that will help you double check to make sure you did your setup right. So that way you're not stressing whenever you start to run the part. So what I want to do is I want to handle away from the part. Remember, do not bump your handle and go in slow increments until you're far enough away from the part, and then you can speed up. So I am safely, a good safe distance away from my material. I'm going to go ahead and give it my codes. So what I want to do first is I want to move to XY0 to check it, and then I want to check my tool length to my Z work offset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into MDI. Remember, I'm not on the right page because I can't see it. I'm on MDI page. I'm going to type in G0, G90, G54, X0, Y0. What that's going to do is it's going to go in rapid absolutely to G54, those offsets that we set, and it's going to go to X0, Y0. Now it's not going to go to 130 thousandths to the left of where we're at. It's going to go right where we told it XY0 is. In the block insert. The next line of code is going to be G43. That is going to look at my tool length offset page. Remember, it's tool 6, so my T and my H have to match. H, 6, Z, 1 inch. That's 1 inch above the part. So it's going to rapid. So make sure my rapid is very low. We're going to turn it to 0 whenever you're running it. I'll go to 25%, and then when I get close, I'll start bumping it back and forth. But when you guys run it, I want you at 0 because it's not a race, and I want you to be in control of the machine. So with this G43, H6, Z 1 inch above the part, I'm going to hit insert. In the block, insert. If you don't have the end block on there, it will alarm out. So from here, I'm going to hit cycle start. So you'll notice in my position page, it is moving distance to go. It's almost there, and then it's going to start dropping in Z. So I'm dropping in Z. I have 4 inches left until I'm 5 inches above, or 1 inch above the part. So it's almost there. I've got 1 inch left. Like I said, it's not a race. I've got 1 inch left, and then it's going to stop. Now notice I had my finger on the feed hold button the entire time. Don't put your hands by your side. Keep your finger on the feed hold button, because you never know when you accidentally have it 100%, and if your hand isn't touching the button, you're not even guaranteed to stop it if it is on there. So I'd like for you to have this on the button all the time when you're running your parts and when you're checking your setups. Always have your hand on the feed hold button. This is a good way of staying in control of your machine. So now that we are absolutely 1 inch above our part and at XY0, I'm going to take my 1, 2, 3 block. I'm going to put it on my part, and if you'll notice, I just very slightly went underneath my center drill. And if it looks right, it is right. And if you wanted to, you could probably lower your work offset 10 thousandths, and then I'd lightly bump it, okay? So that looks really good. So I know that I have set my tool correctly, and I know that my work offset is set correctly. If you would like, you can do that on every single tool. Just remember to call up the tool before you enter that code. So what I'm going to do now is go into handle, and I'm going to come down close to that corner. And if you'll notice, it's kind of hard to see on the video, but if you'll look at it, you'll see that I'm to the right of the left side of the part in X, and I'm in front of the part in Y. So if it looks right, it is right. Okay? So with all that said and done, I'm ready to run my part. So the first thing I want to do before I get ready to run my part is I want to move away from my material. I'll put my handle back up, and then I want to look at my program real quick to see what's going to happen first. So I can see that I'm vicing on to the correct amount of material. I'm viced on the 4-inch side that is not sawed, and I have all my work offsets set. So the first tool that's going to run is a face mill. So before I run anything, I want to make sure that my feed rate, or I'm sorry, my rapid is at 0. My feed rate is at 100%. I can control how fast the machine goes with this, or I can just stop the machine with my feed hold. I want to make sure my spindle's at 100%, and I want to make sure that my optional stop, which is M01, is on. That means it'll stop before it does a tool change. You want this because you want to see what's going on in the machine. So I'm going to close my doors, and at this point in time, I would simply go to the top of my program. I'd go to memory. I would make sure that my distance to go is up here. If it's not, sometimes it looks like this. I want you to go to the check screen, and I want this to say distance to go. If it says relative or absolute, that's fine on the monitor, but I like to see my distance to go. Once I have all of this set up, I am ready to hit cycle start. When I hit cycle start and that first tool starts coming down on my distance to go, it doesn't matter what this says. I want to push feed hold when it looks like my tool is 1 inch above the part. Then I want to look at my distance to go and make sure that looks right. And if you'll notice, my rapid has not increased. So just to make sure we all have gone over everything, we have powered up and honed the machine. We have set our tools. We have set the work offsets. We've set our Z work offset, and then we used our MDI to check and make sure that everything is right. So I hope this video helps. Be sure and watch it as many times as you need to. It is a lot of information, But by doing these steps and following the instructions on this video, it will keep you from crashing the machine and help you get a good part. Again, my name is Aaron Runk. Thank you again for watching this video.